At the end of turn 2, we left with a score of 11 victory points. And before we begin with turn 3, some corrections and therefore some victory point adjustments need to be made. At the beginning of the last video, I credited the elimination of the headquarters of the 10th New Zealander Brigade with 1 victory point. Headquarters eliminated in this game earned 2 victory points with the exception of the Crete Force Corps Headquarters, which is worth 3. So we adjust the victory point score by +1. In the German air tactical phase, a Stuka attack at Kania produced a die roll of 3 equal to the Stuka's tactical combat factor. I set myself to use the optional rules in this game which allow for tactical retreats, and under these rules, when an air unit attacks a ground unit and rolls equal to its combat factor, the ground unit is not eliminated but retreated or placed in the Allied reserve, from which it can later return to the game. Thus, the victory point score for the attack on Kania has to be reduced by 1, and now we're back at +0. Similarly, I credited 1 victory point to the Stuka attack on Suda Port, which also resulted in a die roll of 3, so now we're at -1. In the ground combat phase, there was combat at Kania, and I mistakenly gave the Germans a +2 on the tactical edge die roll modifier, when it should have been only a +1 since the German unit was not an elite unit. Because the Germans rolled a 4 and the Allies with a die roll modifier of 2 rolled a 3, both sides should have been tied with a modified die roll of 5 in the tactical edge determination. The rules, in case of ties, give the tactical edge to the defender unless the area is a plain space or an airfield space, but Kania is a town space, so the Allies were supposed to have the tactical edge. So now we proceed to correctly resolve the combat. The Allies, having the tactical edge, fire both of their units first. The Greek 7th Regiment rolls a 5, and the Greek partisan unit a 2. So both miss. Now the Germans fire, and they roll a 3, inflicting 1 hit and eliminating the Greek 7th Regiment for 1 victory point, which was the same result in the original video but through different means. So the score is not adjusted for this, I'm just showing you the correct procedure. So we're still at -1. In the ground attack against Malemi Airfield, our engineer unit rolled a 3, forcing the British artillery unit to retreat. However, Allied units do not retreat to adjacent spaces, as was shown in the video. Instead, when an Allied unit is called to retreat, the unit is simply placed in the Allied reserve, and no victory points are received for causing retreats. Also, during the Allied Middle East command phase, a dice roll of 12 caused an event called RAF Raids Luftwaffe Airfields, where 2 of our air units, one Me-109 and one Me-110, were both reduced, and I forgot to deduct 1 victory point for each reduction. Consequently, the victory point adjustment is now -3. Therefore, instead of beginning turn 3 with 11 victory points, we start the turn with 3 less victory points, that is, at level 8. Bummer, but that's war. And by now you're probably going, hey, what's this, a video about mistakes? Well, yeah, we still have 15 more to go. No, we're all set. On to turn 3. Maestro Pancaldi, please. This is the situation at the beginning of turn 3. The Sturm regiment was dropped over Kania, and Malemi town is under the Germans' control, as well as the Prison Valley. And we have a unit, although it's an elite unit that probably could be better used somewhere else, controlling the White Mountains. Two zones are being disputed: Malemi Airfield and the port of Kania. The rest of the island has been untouched by airborne invasion, but that may change now in this turn. Our Air Force has taken a hit as we have 5 reduced units. We have an airborne regiment earmarked for Retimo and another one for Heraklion, and one in reserve together with the entirety of the 5th Mountain Division and other units. The level of the Royal Navy at 7 makes an amphibious operation an unrealistic option at this time, and Allied command, and therefore Allied morale, is still high. So we move on to the first phase of this turn, the Flieger Corps 11 staff point phase, and we need these staff points for many purposes, including strengthening our Air Force. So we roll 1d6, and the roll is a 5, which is not bad. And we mark it here on the Flieger Corps track. The next phase is the German intelligence phase, where we can spend Flieger Corps points to try to obtain information about which Allied units are occupying which zones. But giving the need for Flieger Corps points to strengthening our air forces and probably to gain the tactical edge in some battles that are going to occur this turn, we're going to not use any points for this purpose. To the German refit phase, and you can spend a Flieger Corps to refit a ground unit or an air unit. It would be nice to refit all units, but we wouldn't have any Flieger Corps points left, and they're sorely needed for other purposes. So we will refit only the 2 Stuka units. And we spent 2 Flieger Corps points, so we still have 3 available. We only have 1 reduced unit on the map, which is that anti-tank battalion at Malemi Airfield. But refitting a ground unit with the optional rules, we would have to spend an air transport unit, and we want to bring in another regiment in this turn, and we need all the transports we can use. So that unit remains at reduced strength. And on to the German staging phase. We have 6 air transport units. That means we can airdrop 6 airborne units in this turn. And we will be dropping these 4 units in the Retimo sector, so we can drop 2 more. So we're going to assign this anti-tank battalion to also jump with that force at Retimo, and this heavy weapons battalion to reinforce the Sturm regiment in the Kania sector. And we assign all the transports to the units to be airdropped. Now to assign the air units, we have 11 full-strength bomber units and 2 full-strength fighter units to be assigned. Before we assign any air units, let's think about what is important here. The Allies have their morale at the highest point, 12. And if we assign no aircraft to Allied morale, they're going to roll 3 times on the Middle East Command Events table, which has a lot of events that favor the Allies. So to make an impact and reduce that number of rolls, morale has to go down at least to 8, so that they roll only twice. That means we have to reduce morale by 4. We have to score 4 hits on Allied morale. And our best air units that have the chance of doing so are the Stukas. But you see, their leftmost number is the strategic combat rating. So that's a 3. So 1 in 3 scores a hit. They have a 50% chance of scoring a hit. So if I want to assure, probability-wise, that we get those 4 hits, I would have to assign 8 Stukas. And we only have 6 Stukas. And we would have to assign even more planes to Allied morale attacks. And we will definitely proceed to airdrop a regiment at Retimo. So we won't assign any of our planes to attack Allied morale. We will go with 3 bomber units, and none of them Stukas, at Cania, and 6 bomber units, including 4 Stuka units over Retimo sector, and 2 Stuka units to attack the Royal Navy. Now we're going to the German tactical movement phase. We can only move ground units that are in zones which do not contain any enemy units. Each of our units can move 2 zones and must stop if it enters a zone occupied by an enemy unit. And movement allowance could be increased by 1 if we use a Flieger Corps point, but we're not going to do that. So we're going to begin this elite battalion 2 zones into Cania. And one of these battalions will move into Malemi airfield. The remaining battalion will move 2 zones and occupy the White Mountains. And the headquarters of the Sturm Regiment will move to Malemi town. And that's the end of the German tactical movement phase. Now to the German strategic air attack phase. And we only have an attack on the Royal Navy by 2 Stuka units, so we roll 2 d6s. A 5 and a 6 both miss badly, and one of them is reduced. And our victory point score is reduced too, to 7. Now we move on to the German tactical air movement phase. We start by placing the assigned air units in the Cania sector. And we will see tactical air attacks at Kisamos, Malemi airfield, and Suda. Now we place the air transport unit in the Cania sector. And the airdrop will be in Prison Valley. Now to the tactical air movement in the Retimo sector. We start by placing our bomber units. And in this sector, 2 zones are important: Retimo airfield and Retimo port. So we see units assigned to Retimo airfield and Retimo port, and also 1 Stuka unit that is also assigned to bomb the rough terrain space between Retimo port and Armenoi. This zone can be important later to help the regiment link up with the Sturm regiment at Cania. Now we move the transports destined to the Retimo sector to their respective zones. And we have 3 units assigned to the airfield and 2 to the port. Next is the German amphibious movement phase. We don't have any units earmarked for amphibious move, so we go to the next phase, the Allied reveal phase. In the Cania sector, the only units that have to be revealed are those at Kisamos. Among them, an anti-aircraft unit. Now we reveal the Allied units in the Retimo sector. And we see that there are no anti-aircraft units, a deception unit at Retimo airfield. So we remove that marker and place it back in the Allied reserves. Now we move on to the Allied anti-aircraft phase. And there's only 1 Allied anti-aircraft unit in the same zone as one of our air units, and that is here at Kisamos, an anti-aircraft unit with a strength of 1. And The only way it can affect our mission is by rolling a 1. And because 1 is equal to its combat strength, it will not reduce our unit, but merely cause our unit to abort its mission. So we roll 1d6. The roll is a 5, and the allied unit misses. And on to the German tactical air attack phase. And a reminder that we're playing with the optional rules that involve the possibility of a tactical retreat. So for a hit, we actually have to roll lower than the air unit's combat factor. Equal to the combat factor means a tactical retreat. And we will start solving the tactical air attacks here in the Kania sector, starting with the Dornier unit at Kisamos. And we have to roll equal or lower than the tactical rating of 3. And the roll is a 6, so the Dornier suffers a hit. And it leaves for its base. And now we continue now at Malemi Airfield, at Junkers 88. We need 4 or less. And another 6. So the Junkers also gets hit. And things are not looking well here for our air forces. We have a Dornier attacking Suda Port. And a 3, so that causes a tactical retreat on a unit of our choice. And we will choose the Cadre Greek unit, which is an elite unit. So that unit is placed in the reserves. And we keep moving now to the west. We have the Stuka attacking the British unit in rough terrain. We need 3 or less. A 5, and the Stuka misses. Now moving on to Retimo Port, and we fire away with the Heinkel. Also a 5 and also a miss. And now with the Stuka. At last a hit with a 2. So the Stuka hits. And we eliminate the Greek infantry regiment. And now to Retimo Airfield. This space is critical. Fire away with the Junkers 87, which is at the 12 o'clock position. A 4, and that's a miss. And now with the Junkers 88, a 3, and that's a hit. And we pick the Australian battalion. And finally we have the Stuka. Rolls a 3, so there's a tactical retreat, and the 8th Greek Infantry Regiment will be retreated, meaning that it will go into the Allied Reserve. So our aircraft, bombers, are headed back to their air bases, and next are the airdrops in Kania and then Retimo. 2 Allied units were destroyed for 2 victory points, but 2 of our aircraft units were reduced for -2 victory points. So the victory point score remains at 7. Now to the German airdrop and landing phase. And we have airdrops in Retimo and 1 unit in Kania, specifically in Prison Valley. We have 3 Flieger Corps staff points left, and we may want to save those for combat situations, especially around Retimo. So we will not use any of these points in this airdrop. And Prison Valley is a plain space, so on a 1 there's a scattered result and the unit will fall in an adjacent space. On a 2 it would be reduced any other result and it lands safely. So we roll 1d6. The roll is a 6, and the unit lands safely at Prison Valley. And now we resolve the airdrops in the Retimo sector, and we start with the port of Retimo. Because we only have 2 units landing there, we don't want them to scatter. So we use one of our Flieger Corps staff points. We have 2 left. Now, Retimo is a town. Let's take a look at the table. Landing in a town presents its challenges. On a 1, the unit would be reduced and scattered, a 2 scattered, and a 3 reduced. But because we used a Flieger Corps point, we get a +1. So we only have to worry about a 1 or a 2. We roll for the leftmost unit first. The roll is a 3 and it lands safely. Now we roll for the second unit to be airdropped there. The roll is a 6 and it also lands safely. And now to the airdrops in the important Retimo airfield. And because we have only 2 Flieger Corps staff points left, which we will have to use for the 2 battles that are upcoming, we will not use one of those points for the airdrop. So on a 1 or 2, we have a scattered or reduced result respectively. We start from left to right. A 2 and the airborne unit is reduced. The unit is the headquarters of the 1st Regiment, and it is now reduced. Now we roll for the second unit from left to right. The roll is a 5 and the unit lands safely. And now we roll for the last unit at Retimo Airfield. A 6 and it too lands safely. And that concludes the German airdrop and landing phase. Now we return all aircraft, that is bombers and transports, to the Luftwaffe available in Greasebox. And now we have 6 reduced air units. And because in this phase the headquarters of the 1st Regiment received a hit and was reduced, the victory point score is reduced by 2 and is now at 5. Now we move on to the German ground combat phase. We got battles at Malemi Airfield and Kania in the Kania sector, and at Retimo and Retimo Airfield. We start with the battle for the airfield. Tactical edge determination. The Greeks have a +2, +1 because Allied morale is high, and +1 because the German units that are attacking were airdropped. The Germans have no tactical edge die roll modifier, and wanting to mitigate things and have a fighting chance at obtaining the tactical edge, we're going to spend a Flieger Corps point. So now the Germans have a +1 and we roll 1d6 for each of the sides. A 3 for the Germans, a 1 for the Greeks, and the Germans edge out the Greeks and get the tactical edge, 4-3. So now we roll for both German airborne battalions. The headquarters has a strength of 0, does not roll. A 6 and a 2. The 2 is a hit, and the Kania Greek infantry battalion is eliminated. And Retimo Airfield is in German hands. And now to the attack at Retimo Port. Again, the Allies have a +2 for a die roll modifier for the tactical edge. We use our last Flieger Corps staff point for a +1 die roll modifier, and now we roll 1d6 for each side. And the Allies easily achieve the tactical edge, 7-3. And we begin rolling for support units. The Allies have 2 artillery units, and we roll 1d6 for each. The 5 misses, but the 1 is a hit, and we have to reduce one of our units. And we reduce our anti-aircraft unit, and now our support unit, which is the one that just got reduced, fires back, and it needs a 1. And it rolls a 4 and it misses. Now the maneuver units fire, starting with the Royal Air Force Infantry Battalion. We roll 1d6. The roll is a 4 and it misses. And our parachute battalion now rolls, needing 4 or less. The roll is a 6 and it's also a miss. So both sides are locked at combat at Retimo Port. And now to the battles at Cania. And we start with the port of Cania, where there's one Greek partisan unit and two of our battalions. The Greek partisans get a +1 to their tactical edge die roll modifier because Allied morale is high. And we get a +1 because of the elite status of one of our units, so we roll 1d6 for each side. And we easily win the initiative. And we roll 2d6s, needing 4 or less. A 6 and a 1. The 1 eliminates the Greek partisan unit. But Greek partisan units are not permanently eliminated from the game. When eliminated, they go into the Allied reserve box. And worst of all, their elimination does not count for victory point purposes. And now the port of Cania is in our hands. Now to the last battle of this phase at Malemi Airfield. And as to tactical edge, both sides get a +1, the Allies because Allied morale is high, and we get a +1 because we have one elite unit. So now we roll 1d6 to determine tactical edge. The Allies have the edge, 7-6, so they fire first. And they need a 2 or less. But even though the Allies have the tactical edge, support units fire first, so the anti-tank gun. But even though the Allies have the tactical edge, support units always fire first. And the anti-tank unit that we have fires now, and we need a 1. And the unit scores a 1, and because it is the same as its combat factor, the British unit is not eliminated, but retreated. And retreated means it is placed in the reserve box, and we do not gain any victory points. And the result is a 1, and because it is the same as the firing unit's combat factor, the defending unit is not eliminated, it is retreated, a tactical retreat. So we place the British unit in the Allied reserve box, and we get no victory point for its removal. However, we do now control Malemi Airfield. During this phase, one Greek unit was eliminated for 1 victory point. Our forces took Retimo Airfield, and we took Retimo Airfield for 10 victory points, as well as the port of Cania, which adds 4, and also Malemi Airfield, which is a +10. Now we add up the victory points, and I'm going to add up the ones for airfields and ports, even though the game's rules say that they are awarded at the end of the game. But how else are we going to know how we're doing? We captured Retimo and Malemi airfields. Each one is worth 10 victory points, so that's +20. Retimo Port, that's worth 4. We're at 24. We destroyed a Greek unit. That's 1 point for 25. And our anti-aircraft unit was reduced. We lose 2 there for 23. So we had a total of 23 victory points. And the score is now at 28. And now to the Allied Middle East Command phase. And we have to make Middle East Command event checks. And because the Allied command level is at 12, it's 3 checks. And we roll 2d6, and the first roll, 5 reserves released. And we have to roll 1 die again. Fortunately, we rolled a 1. That's the number of units that we pick from the Allied reserve, and we check where they are placed in the random locations table. And we selected a unit, it remains face down, the roll is a 7, and it appears at Suda. And it arrives in the nick of time for the Allies, because we're about to move against that city. Now to the second of 3 rolls. And the roll is a 5, reserves released again. And an event can only happen once per turn, so this one is ignored. On to the last dice roll on the Middle East Command Events table for this turn. And the roll is a 9, Allied offensive at Heraklion, and we followed the offensive procedure on that sector. And during this procedure, we're supposed to move units that are adjacent to Heraklion and Heraklion Airfield into those spaces, but we did so in the last turn when we had units here and in this zone, so nothing happens now. And now to the Allied counterattack phase. Counterattacks occur where the Allies have units together with our units, and the only zone where there are units from both sides is Retimo port. Now to the tactical edge determination, the Allies get a +1 because their morale is high. Our forces don't get any die roll modifier, so we roll 2d6s. The Allies get a 5, and we also obtain a 5, so it is tied, but the defender wins the tactical edge determination in ties unless the space is a plain space or an airfield space, and this is a town space. So we win the tactical edge and fire first. And we fire first with our support unit, the anti-tank unit. We need a 1. And the die roll is a 1, so a tactical retreat occurs, and we retreat one of the defending units, and it's going to be this artillery unit, which is placed in the Allied reserves box. Now the Allies' support unit fires, and it needs a 1. But the roll is a 3, and it misses. And now our airborne battalion fires with a strength of 4. And now we fire with our maneuver unit, the airborne battalion, 4 or less. And the roll is a 3, and it scores a hit, and it will destroy the Royal Air Force ground unit. And that's the end of the counterattack, and the battle still rages. The destroyed British unit gives us 1 victory point, and the score is 29. On to the Allied command adjustment phase, and the Allied morale level is at 12, so it can't get any higher, so nothing is done. To the Allied evacuation check phase, command level is at 12, so it is impossible that the result of the dice roll be higher, so there's no evacuation. And there's going to be no Allied evacuation execution phase, so we arrive to the end of turn phase. And this is the situation at the end of turn 3. We have gained control of Retimo airfield while there's a battle raging at the port of Retimo. In Cania, things are getting better. We have control of the port of Cania as well as Malemi town and Malemi airfield. And all our forces have been consolidated and ready to move on Suda and also to the west to Kisamos. Our Air Force continues to be decimated. Right now 6 units are reduced, and we have 1 full regiment scheduled to be dropped at Heraklion. And still the 5th Mountain Division is yet to appear in the game, but now with the capture of 2 airfields, we may see them arriving very soon. And before I leave, a word about the cards. I will be posting these new cards on the files page for this game. These are 3.5 by 2.5 inches, standard size of poker cards. And these have more information than the other ones that I posted, but I have to add a little bit more. And I'm looking forward to do a video just on these kind of cards, sequence of play cards. Think about what games do you have that have a ton of faces and could benefit from sequence of play cards, because they can really come in handy when you play a game like this or any other game where you just can't commit to memory all the phases. So this is Stuka Joe signing off for now. Thanks for watching.